Welcome to the Wealth Dialogue. I'm Emily.
And I'm Jack. I want to start today with a feeling that I think millions of us share right now. You're working hard, your paycheck seems, well, decent, but your quality of life just feels like it's shrinking. Groceries cost so much more, rent is. It feels like it's just eating your savings, and the whole financial ground underneath you just feels, unstable. For a while, this pressure was just sort of dismissed as, oh, that's just inflation or, the cost of doing business. But the sources we've gathered, the articles, the economic reports, all these case studies, they show something much more structural is going on. So today we're doing a deep dive to explain the unseen forces that are driving this specific financial shift. Our mission is really clear. We want to give you a framework to understand why your income feels stuck while everything else just soars. And crucially, we want to give you some actionable steps to push back and, regain some control. We've got our expert here who has synthesized all this material, connecting the big macroeconomic trends to, well, your daily budget. This is all about turning that vague financial anxiety into clear, understandable knowledge.
And that anxiety it's completely justified. I mean, when we talk about inflation or housing costs, we're not talking about abstract numbers. We're talking about a real loss of stability for working families. And the sources all underscore that the pressure you're feeling is rooted in three problems that are all happening at once: inflation, stagnant wages, and this explosion in housing costs. Understanding how those three things work together, that's the entire battle.
Okay, so let's unpack that first one, inflation. We all kind of know the textbook definition, right? Prices rise over time. But the sources seem to highlight that the real issue isn't just that prices rose, it's how they rose.
Yeah.
So why did inflation suddenly become this budget-crushing event?
Well, what made this period so difficult was the speed of it.
Yeah.
And the synchronization.
Synchronization, meaning everything at once.
Exactly. I mean, historically, prices might ripple. Maybe gas goes up, then a few months later, other things follow. But this time, because of this collision of, pandemic, supply chain issues, geopolitical events, and then this huge surge in consumer demand after lockdowns, all the essentials, food, energy, shelter, they all claim steeply at the exact same moment.
Right.
And that rapid universal increase just squeezed budgets instantly. There was nowhere to hide from it.
Which brings us to what might be the most frustrating part of this whole puzzle, the wage gap. You see the headlines, right?
Yeah.
Wages are up 3, maybe 4%, but it just barely makes a dent at the grocery store.
And this is where we have to clarify a piece of, financial jargon that is just central to the pain here. It's the difference between nominal and real earnings.
Oh, yeah.
Your nominal earnings are just the number on your paycheck, the actual dollars you take home. So if you got a 3% raise, great, your nominal earnings went up.
But that's not the whole story.
Not at all. Because if your rent and your groceries went up by 6% at the same time, your real earnings, which is just the purchasing power of that money, it actually went down.
So you feel poorer because you are poor.
You are, in terms of what your work can actually buy you. And the frustration comes from the fact that wages, for the most part, just haven't kept up with this really rapid rise in the cost of living. That gap is what's creating all this stress.
Okay, so we've got the synchronized inflation and this wage gap. But our analysis points to two specific areas where, the most intense damage is being done. We have to talk about housing.
Housing is non-negotiable, right?
Yeah.
You have to live somewhere. And the cost increases here are probably the single biggest driver of financial instability in all the material we looked at. The simple explanation is, demand stayed high while supply stayed low. But we need to dig a little deeper into the structural reasons for that.
What are those structural reasons? Because this isn't exactly a new problem, but it just feels like it reached a boiling point.
It did. And the supply issue, it's multifaceted. After the 2008 financial crisis, new home construction it fell off a cliff. So that created a decade-long shortfall of available homes, especially starter homes.
Right.
Then you add in all these local regulatory hurdles, things like complex zoning laws, permit delays, that make building new housing incredibly slow and expensive.
Especially in the cities where people want to live.
Exactly. So you mix that chronic undersupply with high demand, and then you throw in institutional investors buying up houses. Prices don't just creep up, they explode. And suddenly housing is eating 30, 40, sometimes 50% of your income.
That structural cost is it's devastating. And it's a fixed expense. You can't avoid it. But here's where the analysis gets really interesting to me. It shifts from those big fixed costs to the smaller ones we overlook. The research calls them the modern silent expenses, the cost of convenience.
Yeah, and these are so insidious because they they grow quietly. I mean, think about 5 years ago versus today. How many streaming services are you subscribed to?
They don't ask. 6, 7, something
Really?
like that.
Right. And then you've got food delivery apps with a service fee and a delivery fee and then a tip for the driver. And subscriptions for everything from fitness to taxes. What we've basically done is outsource tasks for a convenience fee, and those little costs are compounding massively.
But let's ask a critical question here. If someone's rent just jumped by $500 a month, is cutting a $15 streaming service really a meaningful solution? Or is that just, moving deck chairs on the Titanic?
That is a fantastic question, and the sources address it directly. Look, if housing is the giant hole in the ship, then yes, cutting a few dollars here and there can feel small. But awareness is what matters. The cumulative effect of these silent expenses, subscriptions, app fees, all of it, that's what stops people from building any kind of financial margin.
So it's about creating a buffer.
Exactly. If you save, say, $150 a month by auditing those fees, that's $150 that can go into an emergency fund. That's your defense against the next surprise. It's not about solving the housing crisis yourself. It's about building your own little lifeboat.
That brings us perfectly to, I think, this central emotional issue raised in the research. The lack of public education about this whole shift. If these forces are so massive, inflation, housing, why did so many people feel so blindsided and unprepared for it all?
The central failure here was one of communication. It was a failure to warn people. The economic data, it was there. It suggested this pressure was coming. But the public conversation never delivered that in a clear, actionable way. People weren't told, hey, adjust your spending now because your real purchasing power is about to shrink.
Right. They just felt it happening.
They just felt the pressure building. And because they didn't understand the macro forces behind it, that it was systemic, the natural thing to do is to internalize it, to blame themselves, to think, I must be bad with money, and that feeling of being overwhelmed, it's almost as damaging as the debt itself.
So if the problem is real, it's systemic, it's complex, and we were all kind of failed by a lack of warning, what can you, the listener, actually do right now to regain some control? We need those actionable steps.
This is the practical application part. We can't stop global inflation, right? But we can absolutely control our own response. Our research distilled this down to 6 essential moves. Let's start with the first 3. They're all about just understanding where you are right now.
Okay.
First move, track your spending weekly, not monthly.
Weekly. Why is that distinction so important?
Because a monthly review it's like an autopsy. The money's already gone.
Right. Too late.
Exactly. A weekly check-in forces you to make micro adjustments. It moves you from being a passive spender to an active manager of your own money.
And when you say track, are we talking spreadsheets? Is there a simple way to do this?
It has to be simple or you won't do it. A budgeting app is often the easiest way, or honestly, just setting aside 15 minutes on a Sunday to look at your transactions.
Yeah.
The key is just visibility.
Got it. What's number 2?
Number 2 is what we were just talking about. Ruthlessly audit and cut your silent expenses. Go through every single recurring charge. If you haven't used that fitness app in a month, cancel it. Haven't watched that streaming service? Cancel it. Think of it as finding money that was hidden in these small automatic drains on your account.
Okay, and number 3?
Number 3 is a temporary but really necessary realignment. Focus strictly on needs before wants. When inflation is this high, every dollar you spend on a discretionary want is a dollar that could have been used for stability. This isn't about permanent austerity, it's a strategic pause to build a buffer.
So those first 3 are really about defense, gaining clarity, cutting waste. What about the other 3? You said they're more about offense and stability.
Absolutely. So number 4 is crucial. Increase your income wherever possible, even by small amounts. If your job isn't giving you a raise that matches inflation, you have to find ways to close that gap yourself.
Like a side hustle.
Could be a side hustle. Could be renegotiating your bills, your internet, your cell phone. Could be selling things you don't use. Even an extra couple $100s a month can completely change the dynamic of financial stress.
Okay, number 5.
Number 5, build a starter emergency fund immediately. Forget the old advice about saving 6 months of expenses. That's overwhelming right now. You need a stabilizing cushion first. Aim for $500 or $1,000. That small fund prevents one unexpected car repair from sinking your whole budget and forcing you into credit card debt.
It's the difference between an inconvenience and a crisis.
Exactly. And finally, number 6, adjust your lifestyle early. If you feel the pressure, acknowledge it. Don't wait until you've racked up debt or drained your savings. Proactive adjustment, maybe downgrading a car or moving somewhere a little cheaper when your lease is up, that prevents a slow financial bleed from becoming a full-blown crisis.
That strategy sounds incredibly powerful, but
Yeah.
we need proof. We need an anecdote to show how this actually works. Tell us about that case study, the couple who felt broke even though they had decent incomes.
This case study just illustrates the whole problem perfectly. It was a dual income household, financially stable on paper,
Looked great from the outside.
totally, but they felt broke all the time. Their nominal income had even gone up a little, but inflation had just silently eaten away at their purchasing power. And when they finally tracked their spending, they realized the systemic pressure wasn't the only issue. The real problem was they were still spending on convenience and small luxuries as if housing and groceries hadn't shot up by 20%.
Ah, so they were stuck in old habits. Their behavior hadn't caught up with the new reality.
Precisely. So they implemented these 6 steps. They audited all their digital expenses, they cut way back on takeout, and crucially, they took the time to renegotiate their bills. Internet, phones, insurance.
And the result?
The result was they saved over $400 a month.
$400 a month. That margin, that's the buffer you're talking about. That's the difference between security and just running on empty.
That's the key takeaway. It proves that while the system creates the pressure, it's your personal awareness and active management that create the margin for safety. They took back control. They became active participants in their finances instead of just passive recipients of these economic forces. That awareness changed everything for them.
So what does all this mean for you? We've gone on this journey. We've defined the real drivers of this pressure, the synchronized inflation, wages not keeping up, the huge structural cost of housing, and those silent convenience fees.
Yeah.
And then we laid out 6 actionable steps to regain stability. The bottom line is this. The pressure you're feeling is real. It's measurable. But understanding these forces is the absolute first step in being able to push back.
Yeah, the core lesson from all these sources is that you can't fight a hidden enemy. By bringing these issues into the light, by understanding where your money is really going and why your income feels stagnant, you shift. You shift from feeling like a victim of circumstance to being an intentional decision maker. And that mental shift, it's priceless.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to take with you. Since this profound, surprising shift in the cost of living, since it ambushed so many of us without any real warning from external authorities, we have to become our own financial forecasters. So if broad inflation and housing costs were the massive silent trends of the last few years, what is the next silent expense? What's the next invisible structural trend in healthcare, maybe, in education or in energy? What should we be tracking right now to make sure we don't feel surprised and overwhelmed all over again? The work of active financial awareness is never really finished.